there's that. Okay, got it. No worries. Okay, no worries. All right. I'm in there. So let's go here. Let's go here. Now cancel that. Let's go to training. Okay.
What is it?
It's a strawberry energy drink.
Really?
I was trying before.
It's from Starbucks? It must cost a lot.
No, it was good for one today. So
Really?
Bridget, it's not included. Why you weren't here?
Yeah.
Unless I wouldn't. Right?
How much you drink the sweet stuff?
See, I don't care in the gas they used
Okay.
to tell me about.
I'll upload this whole thing.
Here.
Stop them. They can check, I can page it. Too much.
I'm trying.
You can just follow along here.
Can I have a paper? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, so I welcome everybody. I'm going to be doing this class several times because what I learned in the class I took this week, there's still some changes going on, and nothing is set in stone yet because the settlement hasn't been approved, but we need to get a little bit ahead of the curve. So the good news for us that are members of NTREIS MetroTex, they're putting things in place with a couple of months in advance, really a month and a half, to give us an opportunity to check out the forms and things of that nature. Okay, so with that said, Angelus is going to help me, and I'm going to go now to oops. Give me a second. I'm still learning how to do this. Page down. Okay. The objective of the class, slide 2. You want to try to. It can't come up on here. Let's see if I get input. I got it. Maybe. Maybe. Oh, well. All right. The objectives of the class. Okay. As you may or may not have heard, there are new forms available. Maybe you've already seen them and used them. So that's the first thing. All right. And then the question is, and it was reiterated in the class I took Wednesday, and I've watched the video that MetroTex has posted a couple times. It's just under 2 hours. It's well worth the watch. It'll go into the same kind of information we're going to go over through today. Page down. Okay. So here are some important dates. Okay. Starting June 24th, which was Monday. Believe it or not, Annette and I were talking Monday morning because we were hearing that the forms were going to be made available. And so we were on Zip Forms looking for them, and they weren't there, but eventually they started to make their way into the Zip Forms library, and they are there now. I printed out, or actually I saved each one of these forms into one single packet, and I've uploaded it on Paperless Pipeline. It's in the reference tab. Under, I renamed it. It's like I renamed it Contracts and Forms or something of that nature. New 2024. But there's one single packet in there that uploaded today of every document that was either updated or created brand new. Okay, so that happened on Monday. Okay, now the second bullet on here, it says NTREIS fields related to offers of compensation will be unrequired. So you can still do it. So give me a second to go through a couple more slides and you'll know what I mean by that. Okay. So let's go down to the next slide. Okay. July 29th. Basically 31 days from today. NTREIS, and remember, NAR is making the rules, and each of the MLSs, NTREIS in our case, is expected to set their own rules and regulations as long as they meet the deadlines, okay? So on July 29th, our board here will remove the BAC completely from NTREIS. Okay, that's July 29th, okay? So be prepared for that. Now, the second box here where it says possible new field added seller concessions, yes or no? Hello. That is up for debate at this point because the audience is split almost 50-50 if this will happen, because what you'll see in the rules coming up, we cannot do anything within MLS that reflects that there is a compensation agreement. We'll put it that way, okay? So the second box, it could be yes, but we're all predicting MLS is not going to do it. Next page, August 17th. Okay, this is the deadline, August 17th. If all goes as planned, as Pedro will say here to me as he comes in my office, and Pedro's right here in the room with me, who knows? Will August 17th be it, or will they push it? But right now they're saying August 17th is the deadline. And what happens is the new NAR policy will take effect on August 17th. We'll talk about what that policy is in a second. Okay, and the deadline for all MLSs to implement the changes is August 17th, and we're on MLS or NTREIS, so we're already starting to make those changes. Give me a second. We're coming to the question in the room was, what about the old listings? We're going to come to that. So just give me a second. All right. So here are the actual rules. Okay. And there are many of them, and we'll go through a couple of them because I typed them all up for you. Okay. The first one says, eliminate and prohibit any requirements of offers of compensation in the MLS between listing broker or seller to buyer broker or buyer's representative. Okay. Now what that means is we can't require it. Okay. Bullet 2 seems to be almost the same thing, but they're two separate bullets. So the lawyers were not mincing words when they came up with these first two bullets. The second bullet says, eliminate and prohibit MLS participants, subscribers, and sellers from making any offers of compensation in the MLS. Okay. So the first bullet doesn't say directly in the MLS. The second bullet says in the MLS. Okay. Third bullet, require the MLS to eliminate all broker compensation fields and compensation information in the MLS. That's where they're saying the BAC will disappear. And what I learned this week is leases are going to be one of those. Leases are under this settlement. But the gentleman who runs the at MetroTex, he's saying something, stay tuned, but right now leases are involved in this settlement. So we will no longer be able to tell in leases how much you're offering either. Okay.
Wow.
All right. The next one, number 4, require the MLS to not create, facilitate, or support any non-MLS mechanism, including by providing listing information to an internet aggregator's website for such purpose for participants, subscribers, or sellers to make offers of compensation to buyer brokers or other buyer representatives. Now, what the heck does that mean? I tell you what, I had been looking at leaving this office, creating a company to do exactly this. This is what I was going to do, and I've been working on it behind the scenes with a friend of mine who does internet stuff. I was going, you know what we're going to do? I'm going to go start a company, and we're going to tell the Keller Williams of the world and Ebby Hallidays of the world and United in our case, just give me that information, right? Tell me what your BAC is, and I'll post it for you. And you can just direct everybody to my internet site. And I was thinking, there comes that 69 Pontiac I won right there. and then I get the message, no, you're not. You're not. The other thing they said in the class, which was kind of funny, we've got to be very careful. The settlement says if we as participants do anything to try to get around this issue, they have to take us out of MLS participation.
Oh, wow.
So someone actually came up with this idea, and I was going, oh my God, that is so clever. Okay. Think about this. This is what they suggest to do. You have your listing agreement. You don't have BAC in there, but you take the pictures of the house. And in the house, they said, I'll just put 3% on the pillow, for example. Somewhere. And I was going, that's clever. And they said, nope, can't do that either. So we've got to be careful. Okay. So I'll still be your office manager on Monday, is what I'm saying. I got to keep my day job. That's all right. All right, the next one. Prohibit the use of MLS data or data feeds to directly or indirectly establish or maintain a platform of offers of compensation from multiple brokers or other buyer reps. Such use must result with the MLS terminating the participants' access to any MLS data. That's what I was just referring to. Hate to say it, but they're getting real serious about this. Okay. Second bullet on this chart. Reinforce that MLS participants and subscribers must not, and MLS must not enable the ability to filter out or restrict MLS listings that are communicated to customers or clients based on the existence or level of compensation offered to the cooperating broker. What the heck does that mean? Okay. Fortunately for us in the state of Texas, NTREIS specifically, they haven't allowed that in a while. You could not go in there that I'm aware of, nor are they aware of, that you could go in and say, only show me ones that are 3%. Apparently other states did not have that rule in effect. Okay? That's what that bullet is. Next one, require compensation disclosures of sellers and prospective sellers and buyers. So when we start going through the forms, you'll understand what I mean by that one. Finally, require MLS participants working with the buyer to enter into a written agreement with the buyer prior to touring a property. Mm-hmm. So I'm waiting for our bosses, being Nick in my case, or the guys, actually the founder of the company, his brother, and the president were here this week. And so I'm waiting for those three guys to start giving us direction on what will be the broker, United's, in our case, what their requirement is, okay? But what I was told in the class Wednesday, ready for this? NTREIS at any time, can request either our listing agreement or our buyer rep agreement. So if you're out showing a buyer and you don't have a buyer's rep agreement and they actually call you for it, you better have one. That's what they're saying. Okay. Now I've got some news on the buyer rep agreement. So that's coming up in some of the forms. Okay. What are some more dates? September. And this is why I say everything is fluid except the August 17th date right now. September, anticipation motion in support of final approval. That's all that chart says. November 26th, hearing for final approval. So right about Thanksgiving. Okay. Here is a list of the forms that have been updated. Okay. And that's what the documents, when I first printed out, they were massive in a sense. So we've narrowed them down. So we're going to go through several of these, but some of them we just don't have time to go through all of them. The MetroTex will continue to refine their courses, but we're going to go through TXR 1101, the exclusive right to sell, which is very important. We're going to go through 1404, which is amendment to listing. We're going to go through 1417, which is representation disclosure. We'll go through 15. We're going to move to the buyer side. The first top was seller side. The 1501, we're going to go through the buyer rep agreement, what's called now the long form. What the heck does that mean? Okay. We're going to go through 1505, amendment to buyer tenant rep agreement. We're going to go through 2402, compensation agreement between brokers. And the next page, we're going to look at all four of these. So 1507, 2406, 1412, and 2701. These are all four brand new forms that have been created to get us through a period of time. Okay. How long will that be that time? I'll let you know. Okay. So let's go to the next slide. Here is something that I was misled on. Many of us were misled on, but again, it's fluid. And it's actually debatable because even when I was listening last night to the discussion, the debate continued. Okay, so what does the fact say? Do I have to get my old agreements updated to the new changes? So what they're saying is you have a listing agreement or a buyer's rep agreement dated before June 24. With me? And before you think, does this affect new builders? No, don't care. The builders are not part of the lawsuit, right? So if you've got a new build, it doesn't matter. This is only
Okay.
for a buyer's rep agreement or a listing agreement. Okay,
So Danny.
Yeah.
I have a pre-owned house under contract.
Uh-huh.
Before the required date,
yep.
but I didn't have a rep agreement, so which form am I supposed to?
Okay, the question here is she's got a contract, new build, I'm sorry, an
Oh,
old
yeah.
build under contract. Which forms do you need? Right? I'm gonna tell you, just hold that question. Okay, because we'll go through it. Okay, so the answer that we have now is if you have one of those old listing agreements or buyer rep agreements, you're supposed to update it. So what do? The last bullet, they being Texas Realtors, created a new form for us to do this. And I'm going to show you what that form is. It's actually one of the new 4 forms. Okay. But where the debate is, because it says, look at the third bullet. Old listing agreements and buyer rep agreements must be updated if you have not entered a sales contract before August 17th. So I'm going, being literal here. Okay, I'm under contract. Why do I need to update it?
Mhm.
Right? Because I might be under contract by August 17th. So there's going, well, you're right, but maybe you should just do it anyway. So that's where the debate is. And again, unless Rick or Dan or Nick tells me something, Danny, you must make all the agents do it. I'm going to go by that bullet right there. Okay.
So to be sure, I understand, my listing was in April.
Okay.
I have to, just in case, update it.
Yes, with that form. If you don't have it under contract,
Well, no,
August.
it's just a listing.
yes.
So wouldn't that change the commission that I'm gonna pay out if it's already listed?
She's asking about, she's got a contract that went under, she got a listing agreement in April. Does she need to update it? And how does that affect the compensation? Okay, so the answer is, first part, do I need to update my listing agreement? You can, because you're not under contract to make it TREC compliant. Actually, it's not TREC compliant, it's Texas Realtor compliant, right? August 17th, because you're not under contract, but you might get it under contract tomorrow. You might, then you're under contract. But the second question was about the compensation. That's where a lot of these forms are going to talk about.
So yeah, because if my contract says, hey, I'll pay you 3%, but the buyer said, no, I'll pay you, a certain amount, she's gonna ask me, hey, what are they paying? She's gonna outweigh the compensation, be like,
Yeah.
I want this one.
Yeah, what she's saying, what the agent in the office is saying is her listing agreement says X, but the buyer's rep might say, I want Y. So we're going to talk about that because the forms have been changed to take on that issue. They're taking it off the table in a sense. Okay. So what is required by the settlement? Okay, these are the rules that impact us. First, you must have a written agreement before you tour a home, which includes virtual tours. And I had the TV on last night and there was a commercial on during the debate. I don't know if anybody saw the debate, that's a different story. It was a realtor commercial. Yeah, good one. So there was a realtor commercial, at least that came on my channel. And here was this lady, she says, yeah, I'm happy to show you this house. And she's doing a virtual tour. And I said, do you have a buyer's rep agreement? So I thought, yeah, all right, that's kind of funny. She did ignore me.
Yeah.
All right, so it should be, yes. All right, so what they're saying.
And that's
and
on
again,
commercial too, Danny. I'm sorry.
commercial. This is
Yeah.
actually, believe it or not, it was a commercial I saw on TV. I was making fun of the commercial. This is actually what you'll see down here on the third bullet.
Uh-huh.
Rule applies if you're using the 1-to-4 contract. That is not commercial.
Okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
good question though. You bet. So 1 to 4 contract. So what they keep iterating in the class is if you've got a multiplex unit with more than 4, you're not using the 1 to 4. This what we're talking about right now about the buyer's rep agreement does not apply if you've got like a 5-plex or a 6-plex, okay, which is apartments in a sense. Okay.
Does all this apply to commercial?
This bullet right here does not apply to commercial about a buyer rep agreement. Okay. Okay. Well, you're going to be. You're welcome. So look at the second bullet says open house excluded if you are working for the seller. Okay, which makes sense. But the minute they walk into your house and you start saying, do you have an agent? They go, no, Danny, I don't have an agent. Would you represent me? Guess what you got to do? You better have that buyer rep agreement there in your pocket.
Serious?
That's what they're saying. Yeah, because you're now representing the buyer potentially.
Danny,
I don't think.
Yeah.
if I'm doing the open house for somebody else, I'm not working for seller. So should I have lots of buyer agreements with me?
You should. Now, you're working for the seller by doing the open house, but if you're trying to pick up, and the answer is yes. You better have those buyer rep agreements.
Okay.
Yep. To be safe. Okay. Good question. All right. Next
Danny,
slide.
quick question.
Go ahead.
If the buyer walks in and they don't have an agent,
Uh-huh.
and I represent it, they don't want, would they not be able to see the house?
Well, no, you could. You just don't talk to them. You don't try to represent them. They can walk in the house and they can see it. Absolutely. Just don't try to pick them up as a client. Now, one of the questions that came up, this was a great question. Ready for this one? This agent actually it was a broker office manager class. And the broker has an agent in her office that only works with investors. Only investors. And according to the broker, her agent works with like 100 different investors. And what she will do is she will say, let's go tour this house. Right? And anyone from 1 to 100 of them might show up to tour the house. And the question was, do I have to have between 1 and 100 buyer rep agreements? That's what the answer is.
Yes.
Yes.
It's ridiculous.
So the answer to that broker was the following. You go to a lawyer and have a lawyer draft a document that your brokerage has approved that will be, you see what I'm saying, a subsequent to this buyer rep agreement. Okay, but in our case, because I was teasing Nick a couple weeks ago, I said, me and my sister are going to do this, right? For our buyer rep. And he said, make sure you bring it to me for approval. So we got to get anything that we do on our own approved by United, obviously. Okay. All right. Next slide.
So then
Go.
we're gonna audit.
Who's going to do what?
Audit.
Audit?
If we-
Oh, well, good question. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh, there it goes. Okay. She was asking about who's going to audit the documents. It's going to be I guess a plan in progress, who knows, right? But
But they don't charge us more fee because they need to have the audit.
well, I was asked a question just last night. I'll give you 2 points here. 2 points here. I got an email last night from MLS asking about certain things within MLS, and I had to provide them examples of it. And I responded on our behalf. We're done. We're good. It's like, oh, that's the first time I've ever seen that. So they're starting to audit things already. And in the class I took, the broker invited her office transaction manager. It's a small brokerage. She just happened to be sitting directly to my left. They had a closing on Monday. So just 4 days ago. And the title company asked that transaction manager for a document.
You think?
Yep.
What kind?
It was the agreement between brokers for compensation.
If it's on the contract the day,
Well, what it is they wanted to make sure that the compensation being paid was documented. It was that specific title company. Each title company could be different, right? But she said that specific title company says, I need to prove, because this is our policies at our title company, that what the buyer's agent is getting is documented somewhere. Okay?
But that, the CDA is not basically a bad document?
Apparently not for that title company.
Which one is that?
Oh, I don't know. She didn't say. It wasn't United. Wasn't United. In case Amy's listening, it wasn't United. All right. Requirements must also include agreement must disclose the amount or rate the realtor will receive and how this amount will be determined. And you'll see when we start going through the forms what I mean by that. Compensation cannot be open-ended. So if you're saying from $1,000 to $3,000, can't do it. It's got to be a set amount. Okay. Look at this last one. Pedro and I discussed this months ago when we first started discussing this situation. And we thought it was coming. Realtor cannot receive compensation for brokerage services from any source that exceeds the agreement. Okay, so think about that for a second. Let's say, for example, you wrote in your buyer's rep agreement, you're getting 3%. And for whatever reason, you're now getting 4%. Can't get 4% unless you do what? Amendments.
Amend the form.
Do amendment to the buyer's rep agreement for 4%. And that's probably back to what the title was asking for in our case, the money example. They weren't adding up. Okay. All right. Next page. Here's some resources. This didn't come out like we wanted, and we apologize. We put a back page there, but there's a couple resources there. Okay. The bottom one, the Texas Realtor Hotline, I've told y'all about that. I've been using that since I became a realtor 6 years ago. I call them often. That's him again. What they actually said in the audience is that if you call this number now, they tell your broker. Like, okay, whatever. Okay. Okay, let's do a couple things. I want to talk about for the folks on the call, remember, you can pull these up in your forms library or whatever, okay? I'm going to talk about several of the documents and they're implied. So, what we're going to talk about first, and you can take notes, okay? The first one is the exclusive right to sell. Okay, so we're not going to talk about the exclusive right to lease because it's very similar and we've only got so much time. Okay, this is form 1101. 1101. The change is on page 2. Page 2. Okay. What they did was, for the folks in the room who can see this, okay, there is now 2 boxes. Okay. Believe it or not, there is a box now that says it's 5B. This is the listing agreement, right?
Which page again?
2, page 2.
5B.
5B. Broker's fee without compensation for other broker. Right? So if your seller tells you, no, not offering anything, 5B. 5B. Now 5A is kind of what we had before. You know, you put in your 6% or whatever you could get your seller to pay. Okay, you put the 6% in there. This is 5A. And then you say a little bit later, right down in 5A2, how much of that 6% is going to go to the buying broker? So that is almost exactly what we had before. It's just now what they did was, remember the listing agreement had how much you're paying to the other side further back in the listing agreement, on page 8? It's all right here now on paragraph 5. So You choose either, yes, they're offering a commission, the buyer's rep, or they're not. Okay? But there is a new note in here. Seller paying buyer's expenses, right? Says, in addition to paying the above broker fees, seller may be asked by a buyer to contribute an amount toward buyer's expenses. That's kind of what they've been telling us to do, right?
So look at.
No, the buyer could ask the seller to.
Yeah.
Okay, because they're saying.
It's not real hot.
Say again? Say again?
What is?
But anyway, what they're saying is, we go to paragraph 11F. Okay? 11F. And y'all are familiar with this document. Okay? Seller does or does not allow us to disclose information. Yeah, I've been using that form for years. Okay. So that's what's the small change is we're saying the seller is allowing us, not through MLS again, but to disclose to the buyer how much they will contribute. Okay, paragraph 11F.
So that's a new area clause.
Yep. And they actually give you the form number 2412 that does that. I'm sorry, 1412. Okay, so the bottom line before we move further into this listing agreement is the following. The listing agreement has changed to add the fields that the seller no longer has to pay a buyer's broker's fee. Okay? Or they can pay a buyer's broker's fee, and you basically write it right there. Now, the 6% or 5% they're going to give 2 or 3 or whatever the case would be. Now here was something funny, and I think back to one of the first listings I tried to pick up. It says right here that they don't have to offer compensation, being monetary compensation. They can offer product. Okay? The example in the room was they can offer a trip to Spain. Okay? Now, why I was thinking, I made fun of myself because one of them said, could they offer a brand new car as compensation? And when I first got my license, I went to pick up a listing on Farmers Branch. I didn't get the listing, but they had a 1977 Pontiac Firebird in their garage. And they said, whichever one of you gets our listing and sells it, you get that car. I didn't get the listing, unfortunately. But it's right there. You can offer money and or product.
Closing costs.
What about closing costs? What about
It was some of the closing costs.
Well, that is possible, yes. Or the seller's contributions could be used to pay our commission.
Oh, so it can.
It can be. Yep. So go ahead.
So are you talking about 5A, B?
Yeah, I'm talking about 5A and 5B. Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yep.
Signing something that, hey, you know what, we will ask for this much money through this point, I will give it you.
Pedro asked in the room, should we have something signed up front? I'm going to show you a form. Yeah. Yes, you should. And what they said to us yesterday in the room, actually on the call and in the room Wednesday, because I've watched the video too many times now. What they said was, you as the agent cannot hold an offer up and not relay it to the buyer. I'm sorry, relay it to the seller while you're waiting to determine the compensation.
Who's gonna know?
Who's gonna know? Who's gonna know? You're right. But you know, the buyer might be saying, hey, but anyway, that's what.
No, it's a buyer's decision. We don't have a decision.
I
If I told the buyer, oh, that seller doesn't pay, we would say, oh, we skip.
The buyer is calling us, hey, did you send my offer? I was gonna answer, hey, did you redo my buyer's agreement?
That's not bad. Now, as Pedro said, if the buyer says, have you sent my agreement to the seller? Pedro says, have you redone my buyer's rep agreement? So fair enough. But actually, one of the forms that we're going to talk about today is there's a short form and a long form for the buyer's rep agreement, believe it or not. Okay.
We need it.
All right. The other thing about the listing agreement I want to bring to your attention, it's a small thing. When I mentioned that the compensation was all moved to paragraph 5, paragraph 8 is just now say reserve. That doesn't mean anything, but it's going to be used for future. Okay. All right. We went over that. Okay. So that is the listing agreement major change.
Oh, that's right.
Okay. So the next one we're going to go through 1404, TXR 1404, amendment to listing.
And there is on 11F also, you have to put it. The
Say
listing.
again? I'm sorry?
On listing agreement 11F, you have to put it one more time, the compensation there.
11F? 11F is where you're saying the seller has agreed to allow you to talk about the compensation being offered. You don't put it there.
Okay.
All right, now, this is a situation. You've got your listing agreement, a new one, okay, or an old one, and you need to change something. It was specifically going to be changed. The potentially why we're talking about it now is, let's say, for example, the seller decided, no, I'm not offering compensation. No, not doing it, right? And that house sits and sits for 60 days, and the house 2 doors down got sold. And I'm saying, Annette, what the heck? Why didn't you sell my house? This one's sold. You go, well, maybe you ought to offer some buyer's rep compensation. So what do? Listing agreement. Amendment to listing agreement. So what they've done is paralleled what we saw on the listing agreement itself, paragraph C and D, okay? It says, for example, and you've been filling out the amendment to listing forever. You change, for example, the sales price of the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the agent's commission, or you've terminated or extended it. Those are the real reasons you'd use the amendment to listing agreement. In this case, they've added 2 new paragraphs, and it's still a one-pager, very simple. Paragraph says the broker's fee is changed in paragraph 5A, 1 or B, what we just talked about on the listing agreement, from X% to Y%. So let's say they were only going to, give the example, they were offering you 3% to sell it and 2% to buy it. And they go, well, Pedro, you didn't sell it for 1, it's now 2 and 2. They change it. Or the next one was where they weren't offering any compensation to the buyer's rep, and now they will. That's the reason for this document to be changed, so that they can pay the buyer's rep early.
Is there, to get the listing in my drop the price? So I guess my question is, my client has me to drop the price to all of his properties. So I have to redo the contract.
No, it's the same
With the
thing.
amendment.
This paragraph would be changing it.
That's it. But so the contract that I have in place from April is good. But I have to, okay, so there's no, just to have it handy, like, hey, we talked about it on the new one.
Yeah, that contract is still good.
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do is not this one. This is if you're changing a price or a percentage.
A price of the home. Yeah,
Or,
the commission.
correct.
Okay, so.
Yeah. The other document we haven't got to yet is called a temporary, or they call it grandfather document. That's the one you're going to use to bring your contract up to the code. The one I'm looking at is 1404. 1404. Okay, but that's the only reason for 1404 was modified, to change the commission. And well, that was already on the price. One change.
Oh, really?
Sorry. Okay.
Is you
Yep.
really?
Hold it.
Okay. Oh, so it's
Well, look at the date of the form, because you're probably
okay.
familiar with it.
So it has, what they have stuff, but what I have like a mess.
Well, if it's 624 or greater, you're good. If it's
Oh,
before
wow.
624, you need to potentially grandfather because you may not be under contract by
Oh.
August.
Well, but if I am, it's not.
Those are under contract.
They
This
bought the
is
house.
under contract. That's, again,
Oh.
that's been debated in the
They
room.
didn't put
Is
a
it
rock down gate around it.
closed? And that's where the room is like divided. It's like, it says under contract.
Oh, and
Okay.
it says, yeah.
Okay. The next one we're going to go over is
Around that,
1412.
yeah.
Okay. And in the listing agreement, I mentioned paragraph 11F. Okay. And that's where it says you have to disclose the information. So TXR 1412 is seller's authorization to disclose and advertise certain information. That's all it is. And they've just added that the seller is not obligated to pay this amount or any other amount. Okay. It says in paragraph A, seller authorizes broker to disclose to other brokers and buyers that seller will consider contributing an amount up to whatever the amount is. So the seller says, I will contribute up to, let's say, $10,000. But the seller is not obligated to do it. And it says, seller not obligated. Seller has the sole discretion to determine the amount the seller will pay towards buyer's expenses during negotiations with the buyer. If the amount of seller's contribution is included on an MLS listing, which is crazy because it can't be, so that's just foreign. So I'm going, if it was, such amount cannot be limited to or conditioned upon retention of a payment to a property broker, buyer broker, or other buyer. So what they're saying is, let's say the seller says, I will contribute up to $10,000, and they're telling you, the listing agent, you can do that. Right? You can disclose that to the buyer's rep, that they were contributing up to 10,000 in our example. But it's going to be an agreement that says how much it is actually. Pedro says he's right. Can't have open-ended, so there's actually 2 more documents towards the end that we'll talk about the end that covers this. Yep. All right, so it's basically a negotiating tactic. Yeah, I'll offer you $10,000, but let's see where it goes. And once we get to the final number, we've got to sign another form. Yay. All right. Yeah. All right. Now we're going to go to what is called the temporary form. This is one of the new ones. It's form 2701, the temporary form. Okay. And I've said to you guys, if you don't have your old listing or rep agreements under contract by August 17th, what do you got to do? It's this 1-page beautiful form where I've 2701. Okay. It's a 1-pager, and all it says is on or about the date you and the client entered a rep agreement. So let's say on July 23rd, on June 23rd, the day before all this happened, we entered an agreement. Okay. Then it says effective, whatever date you're having this signed. So effective today, for example, June 28th, client and the agent amend the above referenced rep agreement as follows. Okay. All you're saying is client, all you're doing is client means the seller landlord concerning the property at the address you're selling. Okay. And you both sign it. So all this is the 1-pager that they being Texas Realtors created for us, so that our existing older listing and buyer rep agreements are now best practice. So
But if the two rental listing already rented this week, I don't need that phone.
No, you're under contract, you're done. Yeah, this is for ones that you don't have under contract by the 17th. And again,
You don't have.
that's right. So again, because my bosses haven't told us what the United policy will be. So let's say, for example, Annette or I are auditing your documents and we're going, where's this? We haven't been told. We've been told it's best practice to have it, but the guys haven't told me it's mandatory yet. Okay?
We find out. We're gonna find out in 2028.
Good question. He's asking, when will we find out? That's what I keep asking Nick. And he keeps talking to Rick and Dan, who were here this week, and so they've got to take into account there's 50 different states that they're over, right?
Need to see what final things.
I think so, Pedro. He's saying they're probably waiting on the final, and I agree. All right, now we're going to move from the listing side to the buying side.
It's updated.
We will. Yeah, that'll be my responsibility. So she asked, will the checklist and pipeline be updated? Yes, I will be doing that once I get the go ahead from United. All right. Buyer rep, 5 pages, right? The reason we have to have that is because it's now required before we even show a first home. Keep that in mind. Will you have it? I don't know if you're going to have it or not. Sitting here in the office, I would not know if you have it. But if MLS says, hey, we heard you're showing someone, give us your MLS, give us your buyer rep agreement, better be prepared to have it. So you better keep it handy. Okay. So what were the changes? Very few changes. Definition of the market area. This is so stupid. I'm laughing because I remember the conversation in the room now. Paragraph 3C, market definition. Like, for example, if I'm showing a buyer rep, I might say Dallas County, Denton County, Collin County, Rockwall County, right? So it says market area means that the area in the state of Texas specified as follows. Okay. I can put in a single property address. Now, why would I do that? And I'm going to show you why in a second. But that has been changed, this new verbiage, it's the same thing. Okay. But page 2 of this buyer's rep agreement did bring in the new broker's fees. Okay. So everyone who's asking, how do I get paid? Okay. It's right here. 7A, broker's fee. When earned and payable, client will pay broker X for purchases, either percent or dollar figure, X for leases, percent or dollar figure. It's right there in the box. Okay. So let's say I go to my buyer and say, Annette, I want you to pay me 3%. No, but I'm worth it. What if we start at 1%? And if I get more from the other side, will you sign a amendment with me so I can get the other 2% from the seller? What do you think? Would you do that for me? Okay. So those are the discussions we're going to have, right? Because, you know, I've been working in the office 2 years now, so I haven't really been doing a lot of real estate outside. But the last buyer I had that I bought a big house in Coppell for, he would not sign the buyer's rep agreement 2 years ago. So I'm not paying that. I'm not getting, and he was very savvy here too. I said, the seller's going to pay me, so I'm not signing it. So these are discussions you better be prepared for. So the argument is maybe going low and try high. Get the other side of pay. It also says in here where the compensation will come from. Okay. Right underneath it, it says source of compensation. Broker, being Nick, will seek to obtain payment of the fee specified in paragraph 7A, the one above it, first from the seller or landlord or their agents. Okay. If such persons refuse or fail to pay broker the specified amount, client, being the buyer, will pay the broker the amount specified less any amounts broker receives from such persons. So if they, and actually a couple of our agents do have it already in their broker rep agreements, that if they get it signed for 3% and they're only buying a house for 2%, when Annette and I do the blue sheets, we say to title, the other 1% is coming from the buyer. Okay. So it's a discussion we're going to have a lot more now.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do we have to, let's say that we get a new buyer, Sign the rep agreement. Do we have to unload that form right away? Or we just have to have it?
You just have to have it.
Okay, and the second question is, can we handwrite the buyer's rep agreement?
Not using this one?
Yeah, by using my handwriting. Fill out the form, fill out the spots, the blank spots with
Of course you
my
can.
hand.
As long as you use this form. Yeah, of course you
Okay,
can.
good.
Yeah, of course you can.
So I can leave some blank spots for later.
Why not? Because I'm going to show you the short form, which might be something you're interested in. This is the long form we're talking about right now.
What's the number of this law?
It's still 1501. They just add the word long to it. It's a buyer's rep agreement. It's just called the long form now. Okay. Now, remember me talking about earlier that if you get this buyer's rep agreement that says you're going to earn 1%. And we said, all you get is 1%, right? Because that's what it says right here. What if it's a bonus? Well, they put it in here for you. It says it's paragraph still under the compensation broker 7, paragraph 7. Notice regarding bonuses and other compensation. In addition to broker's fees specified under paragraph 7A, where you're getting the 1% or whatever, seller, landlord, or their agent may offer broker other compensation such as a bonus if buyer purchases or leases certain properties. Broker will disclose a specific amount of the other compensation offered to the broker. Broker may not receive other compensation unless authorized by client in writing. So this is what they're saying. I don't think it happened a lot to us, but God knows where it's happened. They're saying that a buyer comes to the table and they're seeing that a agent's getting 2% bonus on that new house. They're getting $20,000 to buy that house from that the buyer wasn't aware of. I was like, wait a minute. I want that money. So you got to get a form, this 1505, to say that money's going to come to you or split it or whatever. Okay. So the bonuses are discussed. Okay. Let me see what other page. Okay. So those were the changes on the long form buyer rep agreement. That was it. Okay. Now we come to a new form called the short form. And it's TXR 1507, TXR 1507, short form. So the powers that be decided, hey, if we have to make our agents have a buyer's rep agreement for the 100 investors that come to see that house, how about a short form form? And here it is. Okay. It's one page and it's paragraph 5, which is the big one. This is where it says what services you can offer. And this is where my sister and I were talking about what services we could do as buyer's agents. Okay. The first box says full services. Okay. What is full services? And it's specified in box 7, 8, paragraph 6, 7, and 8. So basically you are a full service agent. Okay. If you're a full service agent, why not just go the long form, but here it is, a short form. Bingo. What is here? 6, 7, and 8. Pedro said it's open-ended. I said, yeah, it is, but it's 6, 7, and 8. Now here, the other one, this is the cute word that the two brokers teaching the class Wednesday came up with it. You're an Uber agent. Think about that. You're an Uber agent. So what does that mean? Okay. You're right. So paragraph 5, box 2, showing services. So what this means is paragraph 6, 7, and 8 do not apply. So the full service, you don't do them. You don't do them. It says broker will provide client with access to properties in the market area. Okay. Which are in paragraph 3. You might say Dallas County. Client will pay a broker a fee of X due upon execution of this agreement. So think about this for just a second. Okay. Many of you probably don't know, many of you do. When I was out there still hustling to buy and sell houses, I was part of the Redfin referral programs. And they would send me, hey, go show Veronica this house. And I'd take my happy butt over there and I'd open it and I'd try to convince Veronica to do business with me. She said, no, I got an agent. I'm good. I did pick up a couple. And actually, Heather and Tony in our brokerage picks up a lot of Redfin referrals, so they do a really good job with it. Anyway, I didn't get any money to do that. My job was to try to pick up that client. Okay. This is where you're saying, I'm not showing you one house yet. You could make it 0. You can make it 0 to try to pick up that client. But what this is saying is you will show them houses and they're expected to pay you X amount of money to
So
do
how
it.
do we approve?
I mean, approve it.
Like, okay, as I say, I go out to show Danny 5 house. So then later on, they agree to pay. So how do I provide all that documents? Say I do show 5 house.
Oh, good question. He's talking about how do you document it, how do you get paid and all this other good stuff. Okay. This short form actually has an end date on it. So let's say, for example, you're only going to show houses for 1 day. Okay. So you put the termination date as today. Okay. All you're going to do is show houses today. You're not going to write any contracts, nothing. You're just Uber agenting them around, right? And at the end of the day, you're done with them. But when they sign this document, they have to give you the money.
So how we share with the office?
That's for Nick to decide. And I'm waiting for that.
So they don't have to represent them, they don't want an agent, I just show them what they want, and they go by the house. And I get paid to drive them around and.
Yep, okay, the question in the room is, do I have to represent the agent? No, I'm sorry, represent the client. No, what you're doing is you are not representing the client. You're driving around, opening the door for them. There you go. You put it in the market area, for example, right here. And this agreement means to purchase or lease real property. Market area means that the area, and you define what the market area is. You say Rockwell County. And it ends tonight. So we'll see as many as we can tonight. And I want $1,000.
So for this money, does that pay to the brokerage? How do we do that?
Well, that's for Nick to decide. So because on the lease side, anyone who's done the lease and since I've become the office manager, I went to corporate and said, hey, can leases be done with Zelle? And they said, yes. Okay. So we're able to do Zelle as agents already. Okay. On leases, only on leases. When I became the office manager. Well, how many leases do you do? Okay. Well, now you know. So, but see, then I'm going to come after you, say, Veronica, where's my transaction fee? And I know. So anyway, so what I've got to ask
Danny,
Nick,
how do we
Go
how
ahead.
do we determine the price what to ask for this Uber agent?
You decide. It's your choice.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. The question in the room was the comment in the room could be 0 because but again, I'll answer your question second. Back to the comment here on the phone. You decide what compensation, because let's say you keep this, I'm going to do it for a week, right? Well, then you think I might show them 3 houses a day for 7 days. I want $50 a house. Give me, what is that? $350, whatever it is. Now, what I don't have the answer for yet, and I'm going to try to do this class multiple times, a couple times a week until we get all the answers. So stay tuned. But those fees that are earned by the broker. You know, those are Nick's fees, right? So y'all know what our fees are. They're 12% for a lease, 10% for a commercial, or the flat $595 or $995, right? So the question becomes, does this fall under basically a lease, which we just say is 12%? So that's the argument I'm giving to Nick. Let's just charge him 12% and be done with it, right? Because there's no E&O in this case. We're just showing them houses, hopefully.
So Danny,
Yeah.
with Redfin's like they pay their showing agent, did you know I have a few clients, they just use them to show the house. So I don't think we're gonna be Uber agents so easily because everybody can just type it in, oh, I want to see this house. And Redfin's agent pop out right away.
Absolutely. She's right. The Redfin agents may get all this deal, but one of the very young, she was awesome. She was like 35 years old. She's been a broker like for 10 years. She's got like 13 agents in her brokerage. That's like, she's been doing something right? And she says how she sees this document, the short form being used, is she's got 13 agents in her office, right? her agents can't be everywhere. So let's say listing agent A can't be there to show the homes. So she will use this form and she'll charge them 0, as you said, to open the door for them. 0. And that's what, it may be 0 in many cases. Right. Yeah. Yes. So now here are some challenges with the short form. You ready for this? Okay. What is not covered on the short form? Ready for them? I didn't know. I'm sitting there fat, dumb, and happy going, oh, I love this. I'm going for this. This is great. They said mediation.
Mediation.
Mediation is not covered from the short form. Ready for number 2? Limits of liability. Okay. Number 3, fair housing is not discussed. And number 4, the big one. Again, I've got to talk to Nick and the guys about it. There's no guarantee that our broker will allow this form to be used because E&O insurance may not cover it. Now, again, I think if you're an Uber agent, you don't need E&O. But the one right above it where you're a full service agent, that's what E&O is for. So again, we've got to get the answer from United. Will they allow us to use the short form? And that's in Nick's inbox. Okay.
The Uber agent.
Drop them off?
Yeah, and I got the money to pay everything.
Yeah.
I should be a Uber driver instead of Uber agent.
There you go.
Yeah,
You got that fancy car, why not?
and I got paid right away. I don't need to share with.
Or we'll know. I'll be going, we're teasing each other about the pay, but for Bridget in our office, it may be an issue where we have to hire another accountant
Exactly.
to do all this work, right? I just don't know yet. That's for my bosses to decide. But yeah. Okay. The next one we're going to talk about is the amendment to buyer tenant rep agreement. You knew this one was coming, 1505. So this isn't the one that grandfathers you in because you've got an older one. This is where you need to change something you've already got on the buyer tenant rep agreement. And you've changed from before, I believe. So for example, this is where you're changing. So in the examples we've been giving, right? I went to Annette, and Annette said, there's no way, Danny, I'm paying you 3%. No way. No. Maybe I'll give you 1% and see what you can get from the seller, right? So turns out that the seller's offering me 2%. And that says, there you go. There's your 2%. I'm going to change mine to 0 now. I'm paying you 0. And then you get this form, 1505, and Annette signs it and I sign it. And now she's paying 0 because I'm getting 2% from the seller.
So Danny, the special provision is still in the new rep agreement, right?
Sure.
So if I don't want to close this trouble, I just specifically say, okay, whatever the seller pay me over than the agreed commission, buyer gonna pay me, it will return to the buyer.
Well, that will
Can
be,
I do that?
it'll be for probably the powers that be to decide if you can do that.
Really? But there's a special provision.
I know. I know.
You can do whatever.
Yes, you can. I hear what you're saying, right in the special provisions. But then if a title company says, Veronica, we want this document.
So the company can review all our rep agreement, whatever.
They're going to review the commission and where it's coming from.
So if I don't have that short form, then they're gonna review.
No, not the short form. This is an amendment to the buyer rep agreement.
City. You are buyer rep agreement.
I didn't say will, I said could.
Oh, okay.
Good. It all depends. Go ahead.
To my question. So there's no mention about commissions on. No,
As of, in our case, July 29th.
so, we're just kind of start making that into muscle memory that it's just not there. So again, it goes back to if the seller, I would call the listing agent and ask them what the commission is.
Yes,
To know what they're paying.
Yes, you would.
But before I know, because I'm doing my contract, they say, hey, we'll pay you at 1%. Come to find out, hey, they're gonna offer me 3%. I would use that form to say, hey, let's just do the away with my commission and sign that.
Okay, fair question. He's talking about when do I sign it? When do I show the house? What if the buyer and rep say this and the seller's offering Y? We'll say, okay.
Yeah.
So remember this, you cannot even walk into the house to show them to you without signing the buyer's rep agreement that has figure X on it.
Correct.
And let's say, and the teasing, when I was teasing in that, I put 1% in there, right? Then you go show the house and you find out the sellers, because you called the listing agent, she says, we're offering you 3%. Okay. Then you would have your buyer sign this amendment.
Correct.
Saying that I'm allowing you to have 3%.
Build the next property.
Yes, he's right. He's absolutely right. Until the next property, you have to have another one. That's absolutely correct. It is a pain. Absolutely. Yep. So those days. Tell what you're saying.
Even it's blank, you still, it's the same thing. You cannot even,
Yeah.
it's blank, but that's the, yeah, then you still need, because it's blank.
Throwing that.
Yeah.
If you one of those that I worked early on in my career, I didn't know it. An investor came to me and it's like, okay. And I was just writing offers left and right, trying to get it. But God, you know, these don't have to do.
So Danny, do they talk about as a buyer's agent, you cannot steal away the, like which house you want to show? Because you know, if the buyer give us an instruction, say, hey, before I even see this house, I want to know if they're gonna pay a commission. Does that call steering? If I have my clients,
Not if they tell you to do it.
right, because they concerned that, you know, everybody's cheap. They don't want to pay your commissions. They hope the seller pay, right?
That is not-
So if my buyer say, okay, you go ahead, I want to see this house, but I also want to know if they're gonna pay you or I gonna pay.
Yes,
So this doesn't cause steering.
that is not steering because they told you. They want to know what, and again, it comes down to, remember one of the earlier points we talked about where we said that the seller authorizes their agent to disclose that information?
Right.
You better hope they have that authorization. Because the seller might say, no, you can't tell them that.
Also, seller can do that too. Tell
Absolutely.
the listing agent you cannot disclose.
That's right. How are you gonna write the contract if the seller's agent is not authorized to tell you? What you're not gonna know. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna put your best contract forward, for example. It's all negotiations. You put in the paragraph 12 of the 1 to 4. I want $10,000 of closing costs. Right? I want 10,000 in closing costs. And then you see what they come back with.
So it's, yeah. The area want to choose 5 houses, get 5 contracts and,
What do you say 5? Oh, not 5 contract.
well, listing or houses.
I
3 or whatever,
do-
but an amount.
I would say one buyer's rep agreement of those 5 houses, right? Right? Just one buyer's rep agreement of those 5 houses. Or you just have one buyer's rep agreement, have it open-ended to show them all Dallas.
Oh, okay, that's what all done.
Yeah, you still do the same thing.
And it can't be to be determined or not to exceed NTE. Because I don't know what the commission is.
Oh, the buyer's rep agreement will still state start date and end date. Okay. Your market area. And how much you're gonna earn.
They're still gonna pay.
They're not gonna wanna pay it. Yeah.
I said, I think seller still, especially the high value seller, I mean.
They're still not gonna pay you, want somebody else to pay. And that's reality.
So who gonna pay?
Exactly. The seller is gonna have to pay
Yeah.
over the other.
Exactly.
Does it?
So it's not so much how we work with the buyer. It's just so much how we manage the sellers.
Yep.
It's just gonna be a different way, but
Refused to pay and I don't know what's happening on the other end. I said, I'm not working for nothing.
Especially when we pay for like over asking price, it's over my.
Yeah.
How can seller not pay?
So the discussion in the room was, what if the buyer doesn't pay or the buyer is willing to pay? I'm gonna show you a form that we all know about it. We just don't use it much for anything but leases. I'll show you that in a second. Okay. But the final thing about 1505, which is a buyer rep agreement, that's where the bonuses are discussed. Okay. So in here it says, paragraph E, bonuses and other compensation, so that Pontiac Firebird that I didn't get, unfortunately. In addition to broker's fees listed in paragraph 7A, so we're talking about the listing agreement or the buyer's rep agreement in this case. Broker will receive other compensation from seller, landlord, or their agent in an amount equal to X if client purchases or leases the property at the address. So that's where, let's say the builder is offering $10,000 commission bonus. You better have this saying you're authorized to get it.
Signed by the buyer.
Signed by the buyer and by yourself or Nick. Yeah.
Maybe the moment we proceed that, the buyer can say, okay.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you take 5, I'll take 5.
So Danny, some question about the Uber agent.
Uh-huh.
Let's say I someone,
Uh-huh.
they pay for that Uber fee. But then later on, they come back to me, say, hey, I decided to buy the one of the house you want.
Okay.
So do I return that money back to them?
No,
No?
it's your money. You become, they want to buy that house. You either sign a new buyer's rep agreement or an amendment to the buyer's rep agreement that changes you from a Uber agent to a full service agent.
Bullshit. This is so.
Yeah, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna get it. You're gonna show us all how to do it. Okay.
Danny,
Yeah, go ahead.
so are we sending the broker to broker or seller to broker with the offer? For the
Okay, good question. That is actually the next document I'm going through. She's talking about the broker to broker agreement. 2402. This is becoming a very important document now in the new world. When I do the leases, this document is in there 6 out of 10 times. We had set it up in our office, and Lori had set it up years ago that if the lease listing is in MLS, we don't require the broker to broker agreement. But many brokers require the broker to broker agreement for leases. They just do. The United Houston office requires a broker to broker agreement for leases. We don't if it's an MLS. But the broker to broker agreement is valuable because it actually says what the other broker is paying, listing broker is paying the cooperating broker. So it just validates it, right? But if it's an MLS, MLS trumps it. But MLS will no longer have BAC or the lease commission for the buyer's rep, right? They're gone as of July 29th. So document 2402, which is, they changed the name. It's called compensation agreement between brokers. Okay. The compensation agreement between brokers. And it's a single page. Again, a lot of them are one page, which is nice. Okay. Mm-hmm. You put the listing broker, you put the cooperating broker. Okay. You mentioned the property specific because now you're down to negotiating a specific property. Okay. And just like on the current broker to broker agreement, broker X registers client with broker Y, the cooperating broker. Okay. The term when it begins and ends. So those are all very simple. We're part of it. Now here's where they've made this process simpler, but it says cooperating broker fees. And this is actually signed not by the buyer, not by the seller, but by the brokers. Okay. And it says when earned and payable, listing broker will pay cooperating broker percentage of the sale price or a flat fee. Percentage price of the lease or a flat fee. You better have this to prove. This is what, when I mentioned the lady who was sitting 2 seats down from me in the class, this was the document that she had to provide to the agreement between brokers.
So what's stated in a sales contract on that bottom page where it says cooperating broker will be paid, which trumps what? It's different.
She's asking about, the bottom of page 10 on the 1 to 4. Oh, here, I haven't even mentioned this yet. This is important, okay? We're talking about forms, right? Texas Realtor Forms. I haven't mentioned one TREC. promulgated documents yet. And we're not doing that today. You know why? Those aren't available until January. Well, because they're a government entity. They're not realtors.
Percentage at that page 10.
That page 10 will probably go away. That's what they're saying.
So they just pick that page away, that's it.
Or take it out. Because remember, it says all references to broker compensation cannot be in MLS or anywhere else. So page 10 may disappear. So Annette was saying, well, what if it's already in page 10? Well, it may not matter because it may be gone. So how do you tell what, and it's not an MLS anymore. So you're sitting in front of Judge Judy, who I love, and Annette saying to Judge Judy, but Judy, it said 3% in page 10. She's going, no, Annette, page 10's gone. Where's your broker to broker agreement? It says, Judge Judy says within the four corners of the contract. Where is it? Where is it, Annette? I don't have it, Judge. Dismissed. You lose. This one is 2402. It's a very common document. They just changed it to more specify how much you're going to earn. And the last thing in this document, I'll bring your attention, it talks about related parties. So let's say, for example, you're showing your buyers the house. It's a young couple, husband and wife, brand new married, and mother-in-law comes with them. The kids don't buy it, but mother-in-law loves that house. She wants to buy it. This covers mother-in-law. Related parties. Yep.
And that is specifically for,
This is a compensation between brokers.
but you use that form for sellers.
It's for both sides,
Buyer.
whichever side you represent, right? Whichever side you represent will have this.
Oh,
Because the buyer's rep will probably ask you for it. I want to get paid, right? Final one for this class. And again, we'll be doing this class. I think I'm doing it Tuesday next week, Wednesday next week, a couple times a week after that. So just bear with us as we work through all the details. Okay, this one's called Addendum Regarding Broker Fees, number 2406.
There's an addendum for it?
Yes, there is. Addendum for broker fees, okay? All right, and what it says, it's paragraph D. This is what's been added, okay? Other broker fees. Seller shall pay Nick the fee specified in a separate written representation amount due to the other broker. So before I go forward, I just told you guys the form we just went over is signed by Nick and the other broker, right? Seller and buyer don't even see that. This is the form that the seller and buyer see because this is signed by the seller and buyer. So everything that we just signed between the brokers, this is the document that shows to the seller and the buyer how much you're getting paid. Right here. Because they have to know now how much you're getting paid. For example,
Like a picture.
yeah, kind of is, yeah. So it says, listing broker shall pay X or X, dollar figure or percentage of sales price as contained in the separate agreement. So it's just justifying, or justifying is not right the word, it's not clarifying, it's verifying your commission so that the buyer and seller know exactly how much you're making. Go ahead, Pedro.
New builders. Are they gonna have to go through all that crap?
Nope. New builders are. Yes. Yep. So new builders are sitting in the catbird seat.
They're gonna sell home.
Yes.
You see me alone.
They're exempt,
Think I'm old. So
as is a lot of you guys. For people like myself who sell existing homes. Yeah. So I will,
too much.
your job is not easy. It didn't get any easier with this. It didn't. I get it, right? So
You could, Steve, in the office too.
we have to.
So many, and I think a lot of realtor gonna mess up all the forms, trust me.
Yes. Yes. We'll probably have to add another compliance officer and another accountant just to keep up. Yes. Okay.
and so I guess, again, just, the checklist will be updated, would you have it then? Yeah,
But what I'm planning on doing this weekend is examples of how to fill those forms are important. So what I want to do, well, I get it all done this week and we'll see. But my plan is twofold. These new documents here, I'm going to give some examples in paperless
Yeah.
on how to fill them out. Okay, because the gentleman who taught the class that I watched last night, he gave us some examples. So I want to put examples in paperless pipeline for you guys to use to know how to fill it out. Okay, and then we'll put inside the checklist,
the check.
the buyer or the listing side, what documents in the form number. So we've got to go to paperless to get that added, and they've got to go through. We just can't add it.
All right, IT.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And so that's in the works.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I wanted to see where can I locate the checklist for new agents to like for the process of the buyers?
You talking about which forms?
No, well,
No.
yeah, like the checklist of the steps of, getting them to sign the buyer's rep and then the contract and all of that.
Okay, well, I'll create a document for you. There is one in there already, but it's dated. It's a couple years old. It's in the paperless pipeline.
Okay.
Yep, there's one there now, but it is dated.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted something to reference to, but okay, thank you.
You bet. All right, guys.
Danny, you
Yes.
won't quit.
Well, I gotta have medical benefit. I'm one bad ticker away from y'all having to, what's it, fund me?
Go fund me.
You're gonna fund me, yes.
Well, probably.
So even. In July 29th.
Oh,
The
Lord.
option.
Netris is. Yep. HAR, which is Houston Associated Realtors. ABOR, which is Austin, and SABOR, they're doing their own thing.
Really?
Yeah, because we're part of NTREIS, right?
Yeah.
And they're not. So each one, the rule is the MLSs must be compliant by August 17th, right? NTREIS is saying we're going to be compliant before August 17th so we can work out the bugs.
Today is the first time, so.
Uh-huh.
Show.
Mhm.
That it's a signed buyer's rep agreement.
Uh-huh.
And it's the first time I see a buyer's, the BAC
Mhm.
offer for $1,000.
1,000.
When I think it was 75,000.
No, the house I thought was 800K.
Mhm.
It's $1,000.
Left.
Ah,
Left.
what?
Yeah, they're saying that, how much was the house, Veronica?
789 in Harlem.
Yeah,
But they
she's-
pay 1,000.
Did you hear that? The house is worth 789 and the BAC and MLS
Yeah.
was $1,000.
No way.
These agent
God.
be a discounted agent too, because his brokerage gets where his brokerage at, California.
Well, yeah. Here's,
Oh, yeah, right here. It's-
now, what my personal opinion is the people who are listing agents are in a better position than buyer agent. So we've got an agent in this office who only does listing. Okay? So in the example that Veronica just gave, that they're offering $1,000 to buy that house in Allen, right? Maybe the listing agent for that house in Allen says, I'll write that contract for free for you. Because I'm getting 3%. Right? So it probably pays to get more listings right now than it does to pick up. So it is.
What happens?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
What happens in the event that they're not paying any commissions and we still have to pay the transaction fee? So we're just paying that out of pocket?
Well, in that case, if the buyer's rep is not paying, if the buyer decides not to pay you and the seller's not paying you, the transaction fee is still due, yes. So you just work for free, unfortunately. So in that case, it's example, do you want to do business with that client? It's an unfortunate answer, but the best example there is the buyer's going to have to either say, I'm going to pay you at least the transaction fee and the E&O and a small commission, or only show them houses where you can determine that the seller is offering a commission. Or what I said earlier is when you write the contract in paragraph 12 of the seller contributions, you put in there an amount that covers your commission.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. All right. So again, I also put inside the Facebook post and my email that I sent out. There is a really good video that Metro Texas posted. It goes into the same kind of level of detail, but it's a good instructor, and he actually has the forms posted and he highlights them, and it's worth watching. But again, I've got some work to do this weekend, and you're welcome to attend the next couple of classes. Okay. So
Thank you, Danny.
okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you, Danny.